Booktube, welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner, and I thought I would do a tag. This is a tag created by Harry Rosie. It is called I believe the genre book tag. So as you know, there's a series of questions and you gotta answer them. Okay, so question number 1, your favorite genres. So my number 1 genre I always go to is fantasy. And in fact, for the longest time, I was into the paranormal fantasy stuff where it's set in our world, but fantastical things happen. And I have backed off from that genre. I will actually talk more about that later on in this tag video. But the next genre was classics. I don't know if classics is considered a genre or not, actually, now that I think about it. Because classics are romances, classics are mysteries, classics are horror, classics are science fiction, classics are fantasy. Classics are all genres. But I guess because they were written a long time ago and now we study them religiously, so it's like, I guess it eventually became a genre. But I don't know if it would be considered a genre, but I like reading classics. Especially more so now than ever. I also like another favorite genre is historical. It's the next best form of escapism and escaping into a different time period. And that's why I read, so I can escape the real world. Whether it's the real world sucks, or it's just boring and you want to escape to another world, another dimension, or another country. And historical, it's not fully in another completely different world, and there's not all the cool stuff like magic all the time, but history is the next best thing. It's often reading about someone else's miserable life. Unless you're reading like historical romance or something. And then next I said horror. But really it's more like Stephen King, but Stephen King himself is not a genre. He's just a very well-known, very popular author that writes a lot of horror. Although he doesn't just write, of course he doesn't just write horror, he writes fantasy, he writes contemporary drama, he writes, I don't know if he's written anything that would be considered science fiction. I don't know if like Dark Tower would be considered science fiction or not. I think it's more fantasy than sci-fi. Although I don't know if any of his books would be considered to have sci-fi elements in them or not. Like, I don't know if he's ever written. Well, I guess the Tommyknockers would be considered sci-fi. So I don't know if there's any other sci-fi type stories that he's written. Maybe some of his short stories. I don't know. I have to go through his whole catalog. And he also writes like thrillers and suspense, he writes all sorts of genres. He's not a genre. But he's really, so far, horror-wise, he's the only one that I've really read horror. Although I have been getting more into thrillers, which I will talk about that also in this tag. But so those are the 4 I said. And then question number 2, your least favorite genres. And I said romance and literary fiction. Romance to me is just, like, I have exceptions, like classics that have a romance plot. And then there have been some that I've tried out. But to me, the romance plot, I don't really care about, like, a story about a couple getting together. I mean, the thing is, now, despite that, unlike the creator of this tag, Harriet Rosie, who said she finds that part of the story boring when they get to all the romance stuff. But for me, I don't necessarily find it boring. I just don't want it to be all the plot and just be about that. Now, like I said, I made exceptions here and there. Like, I read The Rosie Project by Graham Simonson. I don't know how to say his last name. I don't even know if I'm saying his first name right, but that was a cute little romance about this guy he's on the spectrum. He's Asperger's, and he thinks now is the perfect time for him to go searching for a wife, and he makes this whole list of criteria he wants for the perfect wife, and he goes finding her, questions people, and it's because he's a logical thinker. And takes things very literally. That's how, from what I've read, because I have done research on on Asperger's in the past, and that's it's so it was kind of cute to see a story like that with our main character being that kind of person, thinking that way, and then throwing him into a situation where he is with someone that is a little eccentric, but thinks more like everybody else thinks. What's considered the norm. It was very cute, and there are two other books. I might read those other two. And then I'm pretty sure, I know people were like, oh, it's hard to get with. Now, this is not a romance, but I was just thinking about it because it's kind of a similar story. Or at least where Eleanor Oliphant is completely fine. I'm pretty sure she was on the she's supposed to be on the spectrum. And I think that's why people were a little put off by her. Because the way people that have Asperger's, again, from my research, that's how they are. They can be seen as off-putting. So I'm pretty sure that's what she also, because the way she acted, the way she thought, kind of made me think that she's supposed to be on the spectrum. Now, I don't know 100% sure, but I think that's what the author intended. Like I said, don't go by my word, look it up, just double check, and I will probably double check too. But anyway, it has nothing to do with the question. I was just thinking about that because it's the main character, I think, is like the main character in the Rosie Project. So anyway, the other one is literary fiction, because I'm a very plot-driven reader, so it's not enough for the writing style to be unique and clever and more whatever is considered literary. I need a good plot, and even if the writing is not like the best kind of writing ever, that I just want it to be a good plot. Now, of course, it has to be good writing that I can understand and is not grammatically incorrect. But for second person throws me off a little bit. Like I'm trying to read the 5th season, which I want to read a little bit more before I throw in the towel if I decide to do that. I want to read a little more, and that I feel like that might be considered literary fiction because of the writing style is very unique, even though it's genre fiction. Because it's a fantasy sci-fi story. I don't know if it's going to consider fantasy, because as I've said in the past, the fantasy sci-fi lines blur. Hence why with the whole Star Wars thing, I say it's more sci-fi, and then Terry herself says, but it feels a little fantasy because of the power of the Jedi and stuff. But as I told her in the past, I feel like that's more sci-fi, or even that is more sci-fi. But anyway, it's a very blurred line. But I could totally be wrong here. I'm looking at that. I keep looking because I have the book right here. I'm staring at it. So but writing styles that are a little different, I'm open to trying them out, but it kind of throws me off balance a little bit. It's hard for me to get into the story. And I know, some people would say, oh, that's good. It means it's really good because it throws you off balance. Some people might say that. But for me, this is still, at the end of the day, this is still, quote-unquote, just the book, a story, and you want to enjoy your story. You don't want to have to try to concentrate, and especially when you're not a student anymore. I'm not a student anymore, so, yeah, I will read classics, which are a little more challenging, but I'm also not trying to read something that's so beyond me just so I can say, well, I read this book, and so, I'm so smart. And, I am willing to try things. I got the Odyssey from the library. But I don't even understand the definition of what is considered literary. I feel like it's just a snobby way of saying, sometimes I feel like it's just snobby way of saying, oh, this book is so superior because it's so intellectually better than this book. It's books are books. If you want to be creative with it, and come and have a unique writing style or whatever, then that's fine, but don't act like, oh, my book is better than yours, because it's not. I've been watching videos about people thinking that certain books are better than others because they're so intellectually superior. And it annoys me because, I mean, but that's a whole, I'm getting off topic here, so that's a whole nother discussion. But yeah, so romance and literary fiction. I don't hate those genres, but they're not my first choice. You know, or I don't seek them out or anything. Like, I tried and I just got bored. I mean, I liked romance for a while when I was younger. I read a lot of Nicholas Sparks books. I read every time he published a new book, or I saw a book of his that I hadn't read yet, I would buy it. But now I've since moved on. I'm get bored with that genre after a while. But again, I'll make exceptions occasionally. Okay, question number 3. A genre you want to try. And I ended up picking 2. And I also picked ones that I've already started, so I don't know if they might not actually count, but I can't think of any other genres I would want to pursue that aren't favorites, and that is thrillers and nonfiction. Which actually thrillers is an answer to another question on here. And but so far I've been wary of thrillers, and I will elaborate more on the other question where I use thrillers as an answer. But so far it's been going well. I've tried Ruth Ware's 2 of her books, and I've read a few other books that I think are considered thrillers. Beyond her, like I think Stephen King's The Dark Half would be a thriller with a supernatural twist, of course. And I don't know why people are always surprised by that when he does that. I guess because he takes so long to get to the supernatural sometimes. Like he puts you in such suspense, and then you find out. And I guess for some people it's like, why? Why do you have to do that? I mean, why can't it be just a regular thriller? But that's not Stephen King's style. So I don't know why people are always surprised. You're like, I wish he didn't do that. It's like, unless of course you have that reaction because you just get tired of him always doing that in his books, then you're not surprised. You just get tired of it. But I personally, I like it because I'm grown used to it, and I like it. I like when he does that. I like when it turns out that there's always a supernatural element to it. And I've read, there was one book, I can't think of what it's called, something Game, where a girl is trying, she's not a girl, she's a young woman, she was, trying to find her, I don't know if he's her brother or her old best friend from the orphanage she used to live in as a kid. She's trying to find him because she doesn't think he's actually dead, and so she's looking for him. Although, I don't know, maybe a thriller, it's not a thriller when you're not being chased by a killer. Like, I can't remember if she is being chased by people or not. Maybe it's only a thriller if there's someone trying to kill you, or you think someone's trying to kill you. I'm not sure. Maybe it's just a mystery. But anyway, so I want to get even more into that. I want to give it a shot. I just feel like I need to be, like I said, I still feel like I need to be wary and just be selective with what thrillers I choose. And then the other one, like I said, is nonfiction. I'm slowly getting more into nonfiction, but so far I've only read like 1 or 2 books a year that are nonfiction, so I want to bring that up to like 3 or 4 books a year for nonfiction. Because I think it all depends on the topic. You know, I feel like you can't just, it's not like any other genre where you can just read anything. Although not necessarily. I think with every genre, you still have your preferences. But I think with nonfiction especially, because, you know, nonfiction can be very dry and tedious, and it's not always the most thrilling story in the world. I definitely like memoirs, mostly because they're just one aspect of a person's life, one event, one time in their life. It's not like their whole life story. Because biographies and autobiographies, where it's their whole life story, can be very intimidating because there's so much to read. And it's also usually, memoirs are by that person that the book is about, that the memoir is about. It's always about them telling their story. So it gets very personal. It's not just someone stating the facts. And although I have the Walt Disney biography by Neil Gabler, but that has taken me so long and I haven't come back to it because it's a lot. I haven't even got a good chunk into the book. I'm this much into it because it's just so much to read. I think, and I don't know if that's how it is with everybody else. I don't know if that's the reason. I feel like when books are intimidating, it's because there's so much of the book to read. So I guess that is for everybody. That's why some books are intimidating, because if there's so much to read. I mean, I don't know. I don't know for sure if that's why people consider a book intimidating. Maybe, I mean, it could also be because they're afraid it's going to disappoint them. But I definitely want to continue. In fact, I'm gonna soon. I feel like I need to start reading some kind of wonderful or something wonderful about Oscar Hammerstein, Richard Rogers, the guys who wrote like Rogers and Hammerstein, the Cinderella, Sound of Music, Pipe Dream, Oklahoma. I'm trying to think of what were some of their other ones. I mean, I know there's a lot of them that they probably wrote. There's some that are more famous than others. And the only reason why I'm familiar with Pipe Dream is because I know I've heard Julie Andrews talking about being in Pipe Dream. Do they write? I think they also were the ones who wrote. They were the ones who wrote My Fair Lady. I'll have to look that up. I don't know if it's My Fair Lady or not. But if you're Broadway nuts, you know what I'm talking about. So I want to read that soon. I'm going to attempt to read that this month. But, and it also, not just memoirs, but it has to be, like, an easy writing style. It's something that you can get into when you're not bored with. And that's why I think you should be very selective with the nonfiction. Now, if you're a regular nonfiction reader, then maybe you don't have that problem. Like, I know that from Olive's books, she loves nonfiction, so for her, I think she can read almost any nonfiction, although I'm sure she won't just pick any nonfiction, she has to be interested in the topic itself. Okay, so next, now that I've elaborated so much on that one, a genre you don't want to try, and I picked one that I have actually tried, so I didn't know what other one to think when I was first thinking about the answers to these questions, but then I did remember another genre that I've only read like one book in this genre, and I didn't even finish it. It was actually a trilogy, and I didn't even finish the trilogy. Like, I don't even know if I finished the second one or not, but I finally just stopped reading because I was not very comfortable with it. But my original answer was crime. Like I said, I have read true crime, so I figured, it's just like, can I really count that? Because I have read crime, and this is asking a genre you don't want to try. But the crime, it's really more police procedural stories. I don't want to read CSI type stories. I don't care about those. They're boring to me. I don't want to read about the science behind the crime and what the killer's thinking about the hot, sexy woman he's about to stab. I don't want to read about that. I don't care, I mean, yes, I like psychology, and but I don't want to read a story that is about that. I read a bunch of James Patterson, The Woman's Murder Club books, and I just got so bored. It was very formulaic. I just was done. And then when a guy I was attempting to date told me that James Patterson doesn't even write his own books anymore because he's constantly publishing books. So he has like ghostwriters now writing his books, and now he has an imprint. But unlike Rick Riordan, I think for him it's all about the money. Granted, I don't know about Rick Riordan at all. I don't even read his books, so I really can't say unlike him because I don't know. I'm sure a lot of you guys who have read him probably would say, "Oh, he's not like that at all." So I don't know, but. Yeah, and then the other one I was going to say is erotica. I don't want to read about a couple's sex life. I don't care about their sexual relationships. I don't have any interest in how they have sex, if they have kinky sex. I just don't want to, even if it has romantic undertones. I want it to focus on the romance. If I'm gonna read a book like that, it has to focus on the romance, not just, ooh, these two are gonna get on. Let's go see, let's watch them get busy and all that. I don't care. I don't want to read about that. Like, I will never read 50 Shades Grey. Even if it has romance in it, even if a lot of people say it, oh, it's romantic. It's like, no, I don't care, because it focuses mostly on their sexual relationship. So I don't want to read it. I don't care. And the one I did try was the Sleeping Beauty trilogy. I don't know how to say her pseudonym name, but the trilogy was, or well, now it's not a trilogy because she just published a 4th book in that series. But the Sleeping Beauty trilogy, saga, I guess it's not a trilogy. Just out of habit say trilogy, and it's basically the Sleeping Beauty story, but instead it's after she is kissed by the prince. But instead, what if the prince and his mom, the queen, would take princes and princesses and turn them into sex slaves, sex objects? So it's a lot of BDSM. If that's your thing, fine. But I won't, but I did not want to read about that. I got so angry with the book, and the only reason I attempted to get through the whole trilogy was because I wanted to see the main character escape this lifestyle. And after a while, I was just like, this is not for me. And, like, I think at the time, I was like, oh, I want to be adventurous and try something like this. And it was also Sleeping Beauty related, so I was thinking, oh, it's kind of a fairy tale retelling, and know how wrong I was. And I felt bad because it was a friend of a friend had recommended it to me, because she saw I showed interest in it at the time, and she gave me her copies and then unfortunately I realized too late that it's like, no, this is not for me. I'm not comfortable with this. I can't deal with this. Finally, I didn't, like I said, I don't even remember if I finished the 2nd book or not. But yeah, I just spent the whole time yelling at the book, and not in a good way. And I know that there's a 4th book, and it's like, maybe psychologically this would happen, the character would end up in this way, but it kind of was like, what the heck, she basically does the same thing that these people did to her, except for the only difference to make her be a better person about it is, she gives people a choice. They don't have to, which, okay, that is an improvement. At least she's not forcing it on them. But at the same time, it's like, really? She has to do the same thing? But I guess psychologically, yeah, once, the psychology, like, she went through this experience, so now she enjoys it and does the same thing to others. She can't help it. I don't know, but I'm not gonna, it doesn't matter, because even if I don't agree with it, and I don't like it, I'm never gonna read it, because I don't like it. If you don't like something, don't read it. But I'm not gonna pursue erotic any further. Like I said, I'm never gonna read 50 Shades of Grey, no matter what, not even as a joke. I'm not gonna be one of those adventurous people who's like, I know there's people on BookTube who they'll ask people to ask them, do you think I should read this book just for fun, to, mock it and stuff like that and criticize it, and, they will do, and I'm like, I'm not putting myself through that. I give you props for doing it, but I'm not gonna do it. I can't do it, and plus, those people usually make it into a vlog, and as I've said a million times, I do not know how to do vlogs on here. That's why I just do daily reading videos, kind of like what Steve Donahue does. Okay, so, yeah, that's genres I don't want to try. Next, question number 5, and this is where I talk about thrillers again, a genre you're not sure about. So, like I said, I bit my lip, the inside of my mouth. So, as I've said, I've already started reading thrillers, and I like it so far, at least. But my concern is I'm always worried that it's going to get formulaic and I'm going to get bored with it. Like, it's going to be the same kind of stories. And I think the only risk of that happening is if I read a series or read an author who only writes certain kinds of thrillers every time. Like, that's what happened with James Patterson. I was always like,
I read the Women's Murder Club series, and after a while, it got very formulaic. I was like, okay, I'm bored. I don't want to read them anymore. I never had the year, even though I need to read, even though part of me did want to read the next book, I wasn't like eagerly anticipating or being like, oh, I have to buy this book now, even though they were mass market paperbacks. So it was like easy to get the next book, it wouldn't cost as much as like a regular size book. Still, I had no desire to buy it. I mean, I was interested, but I just have to slowly stop being interested and not wanting to buy the next book anymore, even though I knew I needed to continue. I needed to keep going. And Dan Brown kind of does that too with his Robert Langdon series. So I guess the best thing to do is just, when it comes to thrillers, stay away from series. Although I'm more interested in Robert Langdon than James Patterson's Women's Murder Club. Because, like, with Dan Brown's books, it's history. It's studying history and understanding it and the whole conspiracy theories amongst historical things. So I do like that a little bit more than going through a detective story and find out who done it kind of thing. Now, I'm not totally against detective stories. Like, I like historical detective stories, because it's less CSI. It's more like Sherlock Holmes, and I like Sherlock Holmes. But anyway, that's another thing. Where was I? Okay, so so I'm talking about thrillers. So I think that's the best thing to do, is just trying to not read this like a thriller series, and try to stay away from authors who only write the same type of thrillers. Like, I like Ruth Ware's book so far. I do prefer The Death of Miss Westaway over The Woman in Cabin 10. I did like, unlike a lot of people, I did like Woman in Cabin 10, but again, I prefer the other one at first that I read. Now, I have not read The Lion King yet, or In the Dark, Dark Wood, which is kind of funny, because I almost bought In the Dark, Dark Wood, but then I did that thing that I do, where I look up on Goodreads if it's a book that I'm not sure, but I picked it up anyway at the time, because it was like, oh, it sounds kind of interesting. And the selection at the roast office is not the biggest selection ever. But I was thinking, oh, let me just try it out. It might have been during the time when one of their sale was a mystery. Like, there's, sometimes in March they do a mystery sale. Although this March they are just doing paperbacks, and mysteries are only $1. I don't know if I'm going to take advantage of that at some point this month. Maybe when I get back. Maybe late in the middle of the month. Like later in the month. I don't know if it will or not. I was hoping it would start on the 29th, but of course it wasn't technically the new month. But anyway, what was I gonna say? Okay. Oh yeah, I'm still talking about thrillers. But I almost bought it. So, like I said, I almost bought it in Dark, Dark Wood, but then I read the Goodreads reviews at the time. I was thinking, well, they don't sound like my kind of book, but I might change my mind now. So, like I said, I like The Death of Miss Westaway. I prefer that over A Woman in Cabin 10. And then I just finished. I still have that. That's right. I just finished this one. Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay. I think it's considered a thriller. Is it? What the F stands for? I guess that was kind of. It doesn't say mystery, but I think it would still be considered a thriller. Well, it's suspense, psychological suspense. But I don't know if it would be considered a thriller or not. But anyway, I read that one, and I liked that one. But like I said, I don't know if it's a thriller or not. And then the other genre, I was thinking about another genre that. Oh wait, no, never mind. That doesn't apply to this question. I was gonna say paranormal, but no, actually, it's not a genre I'm not sure about. It's a genre that I read for years. Okay, the question number 6
a genre blend you love, and I said historical fantasy. I love historical fantasy. I think the idea of fantastical elements in history, like the idea of magic. What if they had magic during the war, during the most famous battles, like in World War One or Two, or during Napoleonic Wars, like whether there really was magic in the world, like not just in medieval stories, but when if magic still existed, even in the 20th century. And I'm reading quite a few, like Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. The idea is, what if there were magicians during the, I think it's Napoleonic Wars, and then Naomi Novak's Temeraire series is, what if there were dragons? What if they really had dragons? The natural history of dragons, granted I DNF that one, but that's also kind of the same thing, where what if dragons really had existed? I think the idea of magic is such a cool concept, like not just having there's guns and stuff. What if the bullets had magic powers? What if the bullets could or something like that? I think that is such a cool concept. Not just, like, of course, in medieval, you have that all the time because of the whole King Arthur legends and all that kind of stuff. But I want to see it more in a time when they had a hard time believing in magic. Like the idea of it existing, being proven. Guess what? It's real. There is really magic. There are wizards, and that's the most dangerous thing. Or vampires are the most dangerous thing. That I think that's kind of where that stemmed from, is like the paranormal genre having vampires in history. Like a lot of vampires were made in a historical time period, so I think that's where that stemmed from. Like, instead of it just being, oh, vampires are real, magic is actually real. Like, they expand it more. Okay, so the last question is one I never did come up with an answer for it. But I'm gonna tell you guys the question anyway, and that was a genre-defying book, and I do not have the answer for this one. I mean, I have some. I guess there are probably some books I'm not 100% sure what they are, what genre they are. Or there are books that do have their own unique genre bends, but I don't have one that's like you just can't figure out. There's so many. It could be any kind of genre. I don't have any examples of that. Like I said, I don't know what the 5th season is. Sometimes I feel like I wonder if it's sci-fi. Sometimes it's and then it's like, or is it fantasy? That's the best you're gonna get from me, is that if I read a book where I don't know what genre it is. But I don't read a lot of books where I feel like I'm not 100% sure what genre it is. So, or like it's beyond a genre. But it does, so I don't really have an answer for that one, but like I said, that's the question, a genre-defying book. If you have an answer for that, I would love to know, just out of curiosity, what are some genre-defying books? Feel free to share in the comments below if you like. You don't have to, but I am kind of curious. So, anyway, if you liked this video, like this tag, feel free to consider yourself tagged and do it. And please give my video a thumbs up. And click subscribe if you haven't already. You just have to be passing through this video. And click the bell notification below so you can know when I post new videos. And I hope you are enjoying your reading. And I will talk to you all later. Alright, bye.